Hello, my name is Austin Colburn, and I'm a graduate student in the Master of Organizational Leadership program at Gonzaga University. This video presentation is the first of a three-part series created as my final project for the ORGL 605 Imagine, Create, and Lead class, and is intended to be an introduction to some interesting topics in leadership and how someone might apply them in an educational leadership setting. For that reason, even some of the more high-level concepts discussed here will hopefully be handled in such a way that adults, young adults, and teenagers can apply them all in their daily lives. At the end of this video, there will be a small number of reflection questions for you to consider. I'm assuming you're watching this video alone, so it's okay to do them in your head or on a piece of paper. However, if you happen to have a friend, colleague, or loved one nearby, I encourage you to bring them in and share the discussion with them. So with that being said, let's get started. Researcher Van Wozik and her team defines SDL as a learning approach where learners gradually assume personal responsibility and control of the cognitive and contextual processes in constructing and evaluating meaningful and worthwhile learning outcomes. For me, this means that SDL can help our students take ownership of their learning processes, which include how they learn and how they make sure they're learning. It could also be seen as a measure of independence for students teaching themselves and each other. Researcher Van Wozik and her team identify 4 common barriers that stand between students and achieving self-directed learning. First, the student's sense of responsibility and control. Does the student feel education as something they should take seriously? Do they feel in control, as if they could direct the course of their education if they wanted to? Examples of this include a student's dedication to their studies, their willingness to explore during free-form assignments, and whether or not they feel comfortable diving deeply into one particular subject area or topic if given the opportunity. Second is the student's ability to remain autonomous and responsible. Perhaps, as in the previous barrier, they already take their education seriously and feel very much in control of their learning. Are the circumstances at home and at school supporting the student in continuing to direct their own learning? Think about a teacher who may have been more authoritative than others. Perhaps they didn't allow you to choose your own book during silent reading. Or think of a parent that pushed you towards one kind of career when you were growing up, in spite of a different passion that you may have had. Third is the balance of teacher-student interaction. How often does the teacher interact with their students? And when it happens, what is it like? Is the teacher constantly hovering over their students, barking orders? Or are they hanging back and just letting students do their work? Finally, the role of the teacher. Is a teacher's job solely to teach, to provide their students with information and knowledge? Or is it to facilitate discussion and learning between peers? To shake these barriers at their foundations, the open space format can be used to provide a collaborative and community-driven alternative to traditional classroom models and other formalized structures that you might see in areas of a school or university, such as clubs and student governance. There are 4 general rules to consider when using the open space format. First, whoever shows up is the right person. This might also be called the rule of 2 feet. No matter how big or small the group, the people present are the people who want and need to be in that dialogue. Second, whenever it starts is the right time. This might be a challenge for some teachers or group leaders who prefer punctuality, but truly, things will begin when they're meant to, when everyone is ready. Third, whatever happens was the only thing that could have happened. There are no regrets about where the discussion could have or shouldn't have gone. Conversations may not be perfect, but each one is the best that it could have been for what it was. And fourth, when it's over, it's over. No ending prematurely or dragging out something that's already done. Once the fire's out, that's it. But that doesn't mean that the warmth it produced, the ideas you picked up during, that is, has to fade away with it. And that warmth of ideas, maybe better to switch to wealth of ideas now, gives rise to the marketplace of ideas, the blueprint for a database of sorts where facilitators, teachers, group leaders, and so on can compile the fruits of each conversation to refer back to later. This could be done with a public Google Drive or Dropbox account, or even a binder with a neatly written record of each group's discussions and conclusions. In a trial group of med school students, Van Wozik identifies 6 different outcomes that connected the use of open space formatting with SDL. First, it promotes autonomy and time management skills. In her study, students in the open space group felt like they had more responsibility and control over their learning. Because no one was doing it for them, they had to use better time management strategies to ensure they did what they needed to in a timely manner. Second, students and instructors can take deep dives at the right times and places. During traditional lectures, students are often worried about asking questions to avoid looking ignorant or slowing down the rest of the class. But during an open conversation, why not ask the questions? A conversation is just a chain of questions and answers anyway. Third, it promotes discussion itself and critical thinking. Think about this. When you were in school, how much did you actually talk about what you were learning with your friends outside of class? If you were anything like me, probably not at all. The point here is to get students to start thinking together and more deeply about the things that they hear and hopefully master it through group critique and conversation. Fourth, it helps develop confidence, humility, and reflection. Students who were able to talk about certain topics with certainty became more confident, and students who were not were humbled. The divide between the two is what reflection is for. Oftentimes, students need to discuss the things they're learning so that they can understand just how much they understand what they're doing. And going back to the second point, asking questions when they need help. Fifth, it encourages peer-to-peer interaction. I've mentioned a few ways this is already done, but again, I should reiterate how important it is for students to talk with each other about what they're learning and begin to see themselves and each other as sources of knowledge, not just the teacher. And finally, sixth, it strengthens the sense of community in a group and the trust they might have for each other. In a lecture situation, it might be a competition for who gets the teacher the best, but conversation is always collaborative. Students need to work together, and by way of encouraging and checking each other, they build trust, respect, and resilience. This might be a little abstract, especially if you haven't experienced or heard of open space formatting or self-directed learning before. So let me make things even more complicated by bringing up Chicana pedagogy. This might be seen as an analog for the open space format because of its similarities, but there is no clear connection on whether or not one ever influenced the other. I should also mention that I myself am not Chicano, but I do think the style is really cool. First, let's break down the term for those who aren't familiar. First off, Chicano and Chicana are gendered terms which refer to people of Latino and specifically Mexican origin who think similarly in terms of values and ideology. Pedagogy, by itself, is a word referring to education and teaching, so together, it's a system of education by Chicanos for Chicanos. Think of this as an example of the law of 2 feet. The people who need this pedagogy find it and are welcome to it. Researchers González and Portillos describe the pedagogy as a critical and reflective process, drawing on historical, political, and cultural knowledge in discussions with a focus on 3 primary activities in dialogue, the first of which is naming, being identifying and describing interesting topics and forces of oppression. The second, reflecting, in talking about what learners know and don't know, as well as how Chicano history and culture is tied to those things. And the last, acting, as in acting out the lessons learned in sessions in the community through organizing and activism. Finally, González and Portillos state that conflict is an important part of Chicano pedagogy by way of honoring diverse individual experiences and being student-driven to encourage students to become responsible for their own learning. Hopefully you've been able to identify the connections between the open space format, self-directed learning, and Chicano pedagogy as an example. And this is your opportunity to think in depth about these concepts in your own life. I'll leave you with this set of questions to consider. Remember to think deeply about them, and if you've been watching this video with others, please be brave and share your thoughts with each other. First, think about how autonomous you felt as a child in elementary school. How much control and responsibility did you feel for your learning? How does it compare with the control you feel now over your current schooling or work life? Second, discuss the idea of open, unstructured discussions among your classmates, colleagues, or coworkers. How much do you do this on a typical working day? Why do you think this is the reality? Finally, think about Chicano pedagogy and compare it to the teaching and management strategies you're used to. What's similar? What's different? And if this is the first time you're encountering it, what could you learn from Chicano pedagogy? As you answer these questions for yourself, thank you for watching part 1 of this 3-part series. If you enjoyed this video, please check out the next one concerning authenticity in storytelling and leadership. There will be a link below in the description.